Turning the tables on the Germans had become a familiar story in 1944 and 45. From the D-Day invasion on the beaches of Normandy in June of 44 to the liberation of Paris just 2 months later, Allied forces were reversing the tide of German occupation that had swept across Europe. It was an end of an era and the beginning of a new life for Mansfield resident Colette Wilson, who met her husband Dick in Paris shortly after the city was liberated.
I met him, and the way I met him, my father taught himself English with books and records during the German occupation. And he said, when the American will come, I said, I'll be able to talk with him. So when the American come, he said he went down, and we had a great big park in front of the house. And he said, well, he come back and he said, it's very disappointing. And I said, what's the matter? He said, well, I don't speak like I learned. Well, he learned English, typical English out of the book, which there's quite a bit of difference between the English and the American language. So he asked some of those fellows to come up to the house, and 3 or 4 came up at the house and talk with him, and then he got used to talking English, and I still couldn't say just yes or no, and then Dick stayed. And that's the way I met him.
For the previous 4 years, Colette and her family had lived in Paris under German occupation. She was just 16 when the city was liberated.
Because when the German left Paris, the American had Paris liberated. Half of it was liberated, and the other one wasn't liberated yet. And the German was going out to go to Germany, and they had to go in front of an apartment building and everything. And somebody come in and said, well, they opened the places. They had a big warehouse, and you can get all the food and everything you need. So a bunch of our kids decided we'd go over. And when they opened the door, and when we opened the door, they started shooting at us. And there was little concrete block or concrete something where you used to tie up your horse and things. And I remember I squeezed myself and tried to make myself as small as I could behind those concrete blocks so I wouldn't get hit. But that was close. And then when Paris was liberated, half of it was gone, liberated, and we thought we was liberated, but we weren't. So the guys started putting flags in the windows and everything, and the last of the German army was shooting at the windows in different places like that. Every place they saw a flag, they were shooting at it. And the German would go, they would go with most anything. You would happen to be in the street with a bicycle, they would take your bicycle and go on. You'd see them go with horses or anything, and they was going back to Germany, I guess.
8 months later, headlines foretold the upcoming end of the terror that had gripped the world for nearly 6 long years. Sergeant James Ripple brought back a chilling reminder of those momentous events.
One of the more interesting group of pictures are the pictures of Mussolini and his mistress and the remainder of his party being hanged on the gasoline station in Milan, Italy. Mussolini had been captured, and the understanding at the time, the quick execution of him was because he didn't want the American army to get a hold of Mussolini, for fear we would be more lenient with him than the partisans were. And they lined the group up along a stone wall, and they were all shot. And the next day hauled into Milan and hanged by their heels in the gas station. But those pictures were taken by a civilian that we eventually caught up with, and searching him, we found the film. We couldn't let him go through with an undeveloped film, so we developed it. And that's what we got. Mussolini and his party being hanged in Milan. We made pictures for ourselves. We made a set of pictures for the civilian and gave him the negatives. And that was the end of the Mussolini situation.
Paris, Athens, Warsaw, Venice, one by one, cities across Europe were set free. The power behind the evil that began in Germany and spread to Japan was crushed by the extraordinary efforts of ordinary people, both on the battlefield and the home front. World War II, one chapter in American history, a lifetime of memories, and a message that transcends time.
We're fighting for freedom for the world.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after tomorrow.